You'll often hear a debate between two sides of the argument on how to be the most productive, whether you should start with your biggest task and your hardest task, get that done, focus on that, focus all your energy on that. And once you get that done, you got your small, easy tasks that are left. So that's going to be much easier to be able to go out and accomplish those since you already crushed out that really hard task and you don't really need to worry about that anymore. And this can be a really good strategy. And there are certain times where this strategy is necessary, and this is probably what you should be doing. Say you got a deadline approaching and you got to finish a project within 4 hours, so you shouldn't really be procrastinating doing your small task first. This should be your highest priority, and you should crush that out right away as that's your biggest and most important task. But for me, I feel like I'm a really distracted person, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of times when I do prefer doing this. And a lot of times I'll just block out, say, 2 or 3 or 4 hours, however long that it needs to take to get this task done. And sometimes in the morning, that'll be the first thing that I do. But a lot of the times, or majority of the times, I'm working in a distracted state. And I think I take the other side of the spectrum where start with your small task, or whenever a small task does come up, do that right away, crush it out, and then you don't have to worry about that anymore, and your to-do list doesn't end up stacking up and you become overwhelmed with a lot of tasks to do, even though they're just really small, easy tasks. Just looking at a list that has so many tasks that you need to do can get really overwhelming. This world we live in is growing to be an extremely distracting world, and we constantly distract ourselves with our phones right next to us, just being able to easily connect us with anyone across the world. We're just living in an extremely distracting world, and there is a time and place for those flow states. And a book that I read called Deep Work, honestly, I wasn't a really big fan of how he wrote the book, but there's a lot of good principles to apply. And he kind of makes it seem like this is what you should be doing, this is what you need to be doing. And there's a lot of good principles and research behind getting into deep work in that flow state. So if you do want to learn a little bit more about deep work and getting into that flow state, I would recommend the book Deep Work. I wasn't a big fan of it, but it does have some really good principles. Anyways, that's kind of beside the point. When I'm working, and if I end up getting a one-off project where it might just be a 5 or 10 or 15 minute type of project where I can just crush out right away, I'll usually end up just dropping what I'm doing, do that really quick, and then I'll just go back to what I was previously doing, just so I don't have that task just build up, and then maybe at the end of the day I have, say, 5 or 10 different tasks that ended up building up, and now I got to worry about those at the end of the day. Instead, I just kind of crushed them out as they came in, and I didn't need to worry about it later on when I either finished that project or I moved on to the next one, or it was at the end of the day, and I just had them all that ended up building up throughout the day. And I find a lot of times when people end up getting stressed out, it's because they have a really long to-do list where a lot of the stuff on their to-do list might be really simple, easy, one-off type tasks where it might just be like a 5 or 10 minute type of task, and they end up getting stressed out because they look at the list and maybe they got like 10 to 15 different tasks, and half or more of them are just really simple 5 to 10 minute type of tasks. But when you look at that list, you got a whole bunch of stuff there, and it kind of puts unnecessary stress on you and on your life. Where with me, I just kind of prefer knocking that task out as quickly as possible, getting it done and getting it out of the way. But this kind of only works whenever you're working in a distracted state, which is most of the time nowadays. But at some points I am working in a flow state where I'm distraction free and I'm just crushing stuff out, and I have a certain task that I might have a deadline coming up where that's top priority and I'm not focused on anything else. But for majority of the time, I am working in a distracted state. So whenever these one-off type of tasks do come up, I try to knock it out as quickly as possible just so I don't have to deal with it later and my list doesn't end up building up. Now, there is a lot of research that goes into multitasking, and that we actually can't multitask as humans. So this isn't really multitasking at the same time. I'm not doing both tasks at once. I usually just end up dropping that big one that I'm working on and then switch to the other one. My full attention is with that smaller one. I crush it out as quickly as possible, and then I move back to my old one. The main issue that may arise is that you just might lose your train of thought, and where you were in that process, you might have been on a little bit of a roll where you're just kind of going. So I'm not really saying to multitask or that I multitask myself when I'm doing this. It's drop the one, do this, full attention, and then drop that one once it's finished. Not really drop it, but just kind of finish it and then move back to the other one and full attention back to that one, as we typically can't function properly or at high production levels when we are multitasking. And as I've said in previous videos, we're all different, so you got to find what works for you. And maybe if you do find yourself stressing out because you have a to-do list and it builds up a lot and you find yourself stressing out over that, maybe this would be really good to just knock out those quick and easy ones, just so you don't have a really long list, overwhelm yourself, overthink it, and get a little bit stressed out. But at the same time, find what works for you. If this doesn't work for you, go with those big important tasks first, crush those out. And another reason that I like to do this is in the morning, it can just get that ball rolling where you crush out one little simple task. Maybe it only takes like 2 or 5 or 10 minutes, and then you're able to do it again with another task. And that just kind of gets that ball rolling, and you're able to keep going and crush out more and more tasks. And as soon as you know, you've crushed out all your tasks on your to-do list and you feel really accomplished. So I'm not really saying this is what you need to do or this is what you should do, as we're all different. You got to find what works for you. I just find crushing out these simple tasks and not having my to-do list build up over time leads to a lot less stress on my life and on myself, and I don't end up overthinking or doing anything like that. So I find crushing these small little tasks out, but at times there are those states where I do get into a flow state, distraction free, and then once I'm done those, I might have a few small tasks after that, but I was able to get that really high priority task crushed out and I don't have to worry about it anymore. So figure out what works for you. If you do find yourself stressing out a little bit because your to-do list keeps building up, maybe try taking these actions where you just crush out these little tasks and your to-do list starts shrinking, and then you can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. I hope you're able to crush out some of your to-do list, not be overwhelmed with it, live a little bit more productive life and a little bit less stress on your life. As always, thanks for watching, and let's level up.